Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good morning. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Tuesday morning, March 7th, 2023. It is about 9:17 in the a.m. out here in the state of California. Latest quake shows a 2.7 in Turkey. Continued aftershock activity ramping up in that region. We did see a little bit of earthquake activity ramping up last night and early this morning. Did have a couple larger earthquakes out here. Let's go ahead and check them out on the USGS map here as we look at the latest 24-hour map across the region. Notice the larger circles here indicating some of that larger movement. Did see a 6.0 in the Papua New Guinea area early this morning, about 5 o'clock or so my time, coming in at about 10 kilometers deep, and some adjustment in the Philippines last night as well with a 6.0. That one coming in just around 10 o'clock or so last night. Excuse me. And that was kind of expected, considering the deeper scale movement that we've seen into the Fiji area yesterday. We did see that 5.8, fairly significant deep earthquake striking here into the Tonga Trench, 526 kilometers deep, with some further deep activity just after midnight. 565 kilometers deep for a 4.4, all pushing that westward momentum and the plate movement here right into this region. We did see a little bit of activity upstream too as well along the northwest corner of the Pacific plate up here. That from yesterday. I'm still expecting some activity up here. I know we keep talking about a large earthquake within this region, and it's definitely overdue. But I believe we should see a little bit of adjustment continue up in that area. Let me double check, make sure bells are off. Yes, they are. So let's see what all we've had since about midnight or so. Let's see, we had that 6-pointer. A couple other 4s kicking off here across the Java Trench as well. We did see this one coming in late last night, 5.3, 43 kilometers deep, up around the Andaman Sea area, 4.9. So a little bit of activity. Looks like it's trying to work its way up around this area. Now remember the general plate movement here. You got this huge Pacific plate in the yellow, kind of yellowish brown, at least on my end, and multiple subduction zones across the area. But the general plate movement shows the arrows in relation to the plate tectonics, all pushing towards the west-northwest. That deeper activity that we're seeing here around Tonga. Obviously, when you get deeper activity, that's going to make adjustment either upstream. If there's not, sufficient activity for an earthquake activity upstream, then we'll see that movement and momentum shift westward into our region that we've seen overnight and this morning here within this area. So we'll continue to watch that across this area of Indonesia and the Java Trench today. Looks like they did see a little bit of aftershock activity following that 6-pointer last night, a 5.6 coming in a little bit shallower at about 10 kilometers deep here. Got the Philippine Trench here. There's a couple other different fault systems that run through here. You can kind of see them on the map a little bit through the mountains, but I believe that one's called the Philippine Fault. Not the Philippine Trench, but the Philippine Fault that runs through here. Yeah, it's actually been pretty active here over the past few days. Further down south here, we got one from yesterday, pretty significant deep earthquake. Subsequent shallower earthquake upstream, 63 kilometers deep compared to the 236 kilometer deep earthquake. So kind of what we're looking for. Deeper movement quakes do trigger activity upstream if there is enough strain built up, and in that case there was. So we'll continue to watch that area. Vanuatu area down here, when was that? As from yesterday, 4.9, 74 kilometers deep. Let's see, any adjustment down into the Kermadec Trench area? Doesn't look like it, at least according to the USGS once again. Let's see what we have. Looks fairly quiet down here. Even the EMSC model reporting minimal movement. Now, hold on a second here. These guys, sometimes this Earthquake 3D globe does some weird stuff. It will actually turn down the number of earthquakes here on the globe. So I try to keep it at about 24 hours or so. That's going to be right about that second line. Very sensitive, so right about there, last 24 hours. But it looks like there's some smaller quakes here around the Java Trench area in the 3 range, in between the 4.9 and the 5.3. So things look like they're trying to work its way up into our area around the Myanmar region. We'll keep an eye on that area pretty closely. But yeah, for the New Zealand area, it looks pretty quiet. Let's go ahead and double check New Zealand activity here real quick as we make sure we got the most recent updated page here. Looks like 4 minutes ago, 1.9. Couple scattered quakes out there, it looks like. A deleted 2.4. There was a 4.4 along the Kermadec Trench here about an hour or so ago. Not showing up on either the EMSC or the USGS map. Mostly small quakes out here across the New Zealand area today, except for that 4.4 north, well north of here into the Kermadec Trench area. Things look fairly quiet across New Zealand today. Mariana Trench, that's all quiet as well. Izu Trench, let me double check here and see what we have. Yeah, nothing going on across these regions today. Do have that 1.5.1 up here. Again, that was just prior to all this other activity down south. So we'll watch for some possible future movement here across these regions that have not seen any activity here over the last 24, 48 hours or so. All right, Big Island. Still, man, goodness, Hawaii's been kind of quiet as well. 2.3, the only earthquake within the last hour. Prior to that, some spotty movement across the last 24 hours here, mostly around the Pahala area. Up into the Alaska region, not too much broad it's broad activity, but it's all microquake activity. Look at the 2.5 map. Gives us about 6 earthquakes or so. We did have a 4.5, it looks like, here along the Aleutian Trench, 35 kilometers deep early this morning, right about the time all that activity was ramping up around the Indonesia area in Papua New Guinea. But for the most part, looks like a typical day in Alaska, some small microquakes across the area. Now, West Coast region, looks like a little bit of activity to the Pacific Northwest outside of Portland. Had a 1.8. Goodness, never heard of that name. Huh. That was from yesterday. Actually, all 3 of these quakes here from yesterday. Northern California, 1 earthquake here outside of Bernie, a 2.2. Looks like just after midnight, 12 kilometers deep. Nothing going on across the Cascadia for now. Northern California. What we got here outside of the Sacramento River, 1.5 east of Willows. It looks like a very small microquake and very shallow, 0.5 kilometers. And of course, down here in the Clear Lake volcanic field, you know what's going on. The Calpine hydrothermal operations out here creating some energy today. All right, let's see here. I know we had a little earthquake here near the Pinnacles area. Looks like a 3.9 coming in, 6:33 this morning on the San Andreas Fault. As you know, Northern California has been, or at least California in general, has been pretty quiet. This is about the only decent-sized quake here in a while, and a 3.9, definitely not anything to write home about. But far as the magnitude level goes, that's about the most elevated one in a little while for this area. Looking out at the last 7 days of activity, this is all microquake activity up and down the San Andreas Fault, except for that 3.9. A couple other smaller quakes, it looks like, prior to that. Let's see what we got going on down in SoCal. There was a 3.0 down in Ridgecrest here just after midnight. So slight uptick across the area of Southern California and portions just south of the Bay. Nothing major, but I would say somewhat of a noticeable uptick since yesterday. little bit of activity across the San Jacinto fault zone as well. The San Andreas fault, the southern segment, the one that will no doubt make the news one day, is quiet for now. All right, Texas, looks like things are kicking back up out here as well. Could be shifting back towards a more active pattern here along the North American plate. A couple earthquakes outside of Pecos, Texas, out in the wastewater disposal well areas. Midland as well, it looks like. Up into the Oklahoma region. Got an earthquake outside of Velma. It looks like a 2.1 coming in just after 2 o'clock in the morning. Kansas, what's going on up in Kansas? Lincolnville, Kansas, 2.6 coming in 5 kilometers deep. Not for sure what's out there. Let's see what the seismic map looks like here across the area. Not a whole lot of seismic activity as far as the hazard goes. There are some fault systems that do run up there through the area, but I'm not for sure if that's at a specific, maybe an oil field. I don't know. Looking at the satellite map here, see if I can keep my voice. It's hard to tell. Doesn't look like it. That looks like some type of farmhouse out there. But this is out in the field. Don't see any major nearby oil fields out there, but all right. Moving on, 2.6. Eastern portion of the country, pretty quiet. The Puerto Rico region and the Caribbean plate has been pretty active here yesterday and today still. We got a 4.5 in Panama, 10 kilometers deep here, just south of Costa Rica. And then a little bit of activity shifting back and forth between the two. Of course, this little microplate here, the Caribbean plate, gets kind of shoved around. There's the Middle America Trench, but this is all getting pushed around. This is the Caribbean plate right here. It's all getting pushed around and squeezed and just picked on by all these other large plates. Got the South American plate to the south, North American plate here in the brown, the largest plate up here. And just all getting picked on here today, it looks like. And that's why we're seeing that little uptick in movement off the coast of El Salvador as well, Nicaragua. These earthquakes here from yesterday, though. Let me see what we got for newer activity in the smaller range. Yeah, definitely some activity in between those two zones. Quite a few threes kicking off here in the white circles. Slight uptick down in South America as well, along the Peru-Chile Trench, it looks like. The Puerto Rico Trench over here seeing a swarm of activity. Looks like some upper threes and some twos. This has been pretty active across this area, Puerto Rico. And, of course, South America here. USGS reporting a 4.7 in the Bolivia area. Excuse me, goodness. That's what I get for standing out in the rain and the hail yesterday. It was quite the fun day. In fact, spent a good portion of the day yesterday out watching these storms that dropped, penny-size hail. I was going to use the term marble-size hail, but I can't really use that term because meteorologists don't like that term because there's different size marbles, right? So penny-size hail yesterday, and Chico got just dumped on with hail. It was quite impressive, let me tell you. I haven't seen that size hail out here in Northern California in a little while. We'll get to weather here in just a second. We got a very wet-looking March here for California. Regional earthquake around Turkey here today shows most of the movement up north of our area that's seen a enormous amount of earthquake activity here following the large events within the past 30 days. The largest one, of course, at 7.8 early in February. 7.5, a couple upper sixes as well. But we're starting to get a little bit of migration outside of that normal area where we've seen all the aftershock activity here recently. And these earthquakes, not anything significant. Looks like a couple fours and upper four or so within this area. But definitely seen a little bit of migration out in that region here today. Mediterranean looks like a couple smaller twos. 2.2 off the coast here of the Canary Islands, right? Let's see, yep, Canary Islands area. 26 kilometers deep for that earthquake. All right, let's see what else is there to chat about far as earthquake activity goes. Definitely picking up, though, far as the larger magnitudes. And the North American plate here looks a lot more active. So keep an eye on this area as well. Space weather activity. Let me jump over here real quick and see what we have cooking on the sun. Look at that massive coronal hole over here, 81. That is departing. And looks like we have some sunspots facing us. Wouldn't you say? I would say there's quite a bit. Look at the numbered count. Quite a few numbered sunspots out here. So let's take a look at these and see what we have for any interesting regions here. Well, I've been saying this over the past couple days to keep an eye on this one. This one does have a couple different individual spots here that we may need to monitor. It is facing Earth directly, lined up as well. So anything that does blast off from here will definitely be a bullseye shot, so to speak. These other sunspots are looking fairly minimal across the region here. Except for potentially this area. I got a lot of intermixing of the blue, orange, red compacted into that complex system there. And that's 2245. Looks like it's grown overnight from this image to this image. Things looks like they're growing slightly within 2245. And of course 3242. We need to keep an eye on both of those sunspots for some potential flaring. Let's see, right now it looks like 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 55, X flare is at 10. This has been, I don't know if they've updated this or not, but they did update 2245, and that is the one that has grown overnight. It's going to be the sunspot down here that looks a lot more complex on the latest imagery. So that harbors a beta gamma class, showing a little bit of growing complex magnetic structure here. That's about the most likelihood of seeing a X flare and an M flare or a C flare. It's just very active. But right now, just kind of it's in its growing stage. Nothing major coming up far as geomagnetic storming goes. Looks pretty green across the board with only minimal possibilities here over the next few nights of any auroras. All right, let's see what else do we have here. Weather activity here real quick. I want to get into this because it's starting to look more and more likely that we'll see this continued pattern out here along the west coast. And I'm talking about the wet weather coming up. We do have a couple significant snowstorms coming up here. Going to be dropping feet of snow across the northern California area into the mountains up above 2,000, 3,000 feet or so. And of course higher elevations will pick up more. And this system here is rather interesting because, okay, here's the first one. This is going to be tomorrow into Wednesday. Doesn't look like too much, but it is going to drop some heavy snow. And then we get pretty much a collision of a low pressure system up here with some cold air and some warmer moisture air coming off the Pacific, and they're all going to kind of collide here with Northern California. At first, it's going to be some heavy duty snowfall into the mountain ranges, and that's a little worrisome because what's behind that is some even wetter, warmer moisture pushing the snow levels way up, probably to around 7,000 feet or so. And that's going to melt anything below that. And there's already a bunch of snow up here, up into the mountains outside of Redding and into the Coast Range. All that snow melt is going to go somewhere. It's going to go into the reservoirs, but got to watch out for some flooding concerns here with this big system coming in Thursday and Friday. It's a pretty significant weather maker with, again, a lot of heavy rainfall on top of that snow. Going to create some major flooding conditions here. And then back behind that, another warmer system. And then even a warmer system coming in. It looks like around the 13th and 13th or 14th time frame, with that southwest flow. Almost no snow except for at the very high levels of the Sierra Nevada. And that's, well, you know, if there's any snow up there left following the first warm system, there won't be after this one. We're looking at a lot of rainfall on top of that snow. So this could be quite an interesting scenario. I'm going to keep my eye on it pretty closely. And behind that, looks like we have a break or so. That might be a good idea to have a little break. And then it looks like maybe another system coming in around the 20th of March. And it's hard to tell once we get back out here. But looking at the total accumulated precipitation here for the West Coast, still shows some significant rainfall. The 23rd time frame, look at that. Impressive totals here. We're talking about along the coast range, maybe a foot of rain. The Sacramento Valley, we're looking anywhere between, kind of looks like 3 to 5.5, maybe 6 inches or so, which is still a lot. I mean, at least where I'm at here in Northern California, we're above our average precipitation for the year, and most of that came in January. So this is going to be another whammy of a storm, which is good. Probably will completely put us out of the drought here after this is all said and done. But look at that. Pretty much aimed at the West Coast. A lot of precipitation coming in, folks. So just be on guard. Stay safe. Let me look at the long-range models here. Let's go to regions and see what we got here. I'll take a look at the North Pacific. Hold on a second here to see where I'm at. North Pacific symbol. Let's check out the okay. So this kind of goes. Yeah, I think it'll go a little bit further than the 21st. We'll see. Blue in the is the low pressure systems. What we don't want here along the West Coast is one of these bad boys. That's a huge ridge of high pressure indicating dry, warmer air. And that, for the most part, means an end to the storm systems out here along the West Coast. But looking, and this only goes to the 18th. Let me see if we can go out a little bit further. This one might go a little bit further here. 18th, 19th, 20th, 22nd. It kind of looks like that high pressure system staying in place over here with troughs of low pressure along the West Coast. And that's good news here for the drought and whatnot in California. So we'll continue to check this here over the next couple days. But right now, all weather models are fairly consistent with everything lining up here for the West Coast. Rain accumulation here over the next 10 days. As you can see, all aimed at Northern California. Pacific Northwest, yeah, you're going to get some too, quite a bit. But here in Northern California, it looks fairly extensive, let me tell you, quite a bit. Southern Cal, not quite as much. But looks like you guys will be getting a little bit of rainfall down there into that system, or into that area as well. Alrighty, folks. I'm going to jump off here and see what's going on here today on this Tuesday. Hope you guys have a good one. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later on tonight. Take care.